Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Raja Janarandana Yashodanandana Ranjana Sodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Go Premanandi. All glorious to assembled devotees, all glorious to Sri Guru Gauranga, all glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvasesha Shanyavari Pastichade Shatai. Does this go up? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Does anybody need a French translation? You're from Portugal and you speak English. Where are you from?
Lithuania.
Lithuania, wonderful. And you okay with English?
Yeah, I'm okay with English.
Okay, that's good. We have Lithuanian translators are not here. But you're good with English, so fine. And
He lived in London for a while.
lived in London? Oh, so you, wonderful. And where are you from?
He says it's from France. He's French.
Speak English? English okay? Little. Someone will translate. Chloe, you're going to whisper, or I know you're doing other things that may not be easy, but see what you can do. Where are we reading from? There may have been a marker, but there's not one. I don't think there is. Is there? Maybe there is. Ah, here we are. Ideal family life. Okay. Verse number? 10. Oh. Okay. Trivagam?
Yes.
Please repeat. Trivagam. Vajeta. Grihamedi. Yatadeshang. Yata. Yavat. Daivopapaditam. Trivagam nati krishtrena. Bhajeta grihamejapi. Yatadeshang yatakalang. Yavadaivo papaditam. Trivagam nati krishtrena. Bhajeta grihamedyapi yata deshang yata kalang yavadaivo papaditam Trivagam nati krishtrena Bhajeta grihamedyapi Yata deshang yata kalang Yavadaivo papaditam Trivagang nati krishtrena Bhajeta grihamedyapi Yata deshang yata kalang Trivagam nati krishtrena Bhajeta grihamedyapi Deshang yata kalang Yavadaivo papaditam
Bhajeta grihamedyapi Yata desham yata karam Yavadevo papaditam
Devagam nati krishna Bhajeta grihamedyapi Yata desham yata kalam Yavadevo papaditam.
She's got one. She's already got one. I think so. French? Ou français? Oui. Ladies? Trivagam, three principles, namely religiosity, development, and sense gratification. No. Atikrishrena. By very severe endeavor. Bhajeta should execute. Griham, a person interested only in family life. Api, although, yatadesham, according to the place, yatakalam, according to the time, yavat, as much as, daiva, by the grace of the Lord, upapaditam, obtained. Put by Srila Divine Grace Pad. Reading from the 7th Canto, Chapter 14, text number 10, Ideal Family Life. One is a householder rather than a brahmachari, sannyasi, or vanaprastha. One should not endeavor for religiosity, economic development, or satisfaction of the senses. In householder life, one to maintain body and soul together with whatever is available endeavor, according to place and time, by the grace of the Lord. One should not engage oneself in ugra karma. Purport. there are 4 principles to be fulfilled: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Religion. Traditionally, in traditional human society, religion was commonplace. It's still there, we could say, at least in principle, although a majority of people may not take it seriously. But it's still there in form in the world. Perhaps majority of the world consider themselves following some kind of religious path, I don't know. But it's still there. Dharma is meant for human beings. In the scriptures, in the Bhagavad, human society without Dharma or without genuine religiosity is not really human society. Human society pursuing a path of sense gratification, basically, not really any different than the animals. Animals eat, sleep, mate, and defend, and human beings do the same thing in different ways. And most of our focused around the improvement, fulfillment of these basic necessities of material life: eating, sleeping, mating. Animals also fear, they're also emotional, and so on and so forth. What really separates human beings from other species of life? Spiritually, we're the same quality. The bodies may be different, but the quality of the living entity is the same. It's just that the subtle coverings and the gross coverings are different. The subtle and gross are not the actual living entity. They are coats. They are coverings which the living entity is in. We're in a human covering. And in the human covering, we have a certain responsibility, say more responsibility than those in the animal coverings. Although intrinsically the living entity is of same quality in the material world, the conditioning is different. So in human, particularly is meant for jivasya tattva jignasa, omatata brahma jignasa. It's meant for inquiry. It's meant for spiritual endeavor, spiritual pursuit. And we have to maintain ourselves, no doubt. In the Bhagavatam, famous verse we quote many times, kamasya nendriya pritya labo jiveti yavata jivasya tattva jignasa karma bihi. That this human life is not meant for sense gratification. One should live a healthy life, preserve oneself, do the need to maintain one's health, responsibility, but not more than required. For religious guidance, the tendency is that people become bored. I don't mean bored in the sense of nothing to do, overboard in the sense that they endeavor for more. Just like we see in our modern society, so many consumer items, most of which are, with all due respect, are pretty useless. The real necessities of human life. We've created an unnecessary need in the world today, a particular age, with all the modern gadgets, all the modern things for keeping the body to smell nice, to keep it fit, to clothe it in various ways. We have to clothe it, we have to eat, but it's gone a little bit more than required, you could say. Greed, consequent envy as a result, lust, they've gone beyond healthy proportions, way beyond, and beyond necessity. So they're called anarthas, unnecessary things. And unfortunately, the majority of us, the population, the world today, is enwrapped in increasing the anarthas. And even what we call religion today, in many cases, is also supporting an excessive accumulation or aspirations for anarthas, or unnecessary things, and missing the real purpose of human life. To who am I? Whereas most people, they identify themselves with a body. This verse today is very kind of related to one of Lord Chaitanya's statements, Naham vipro na cha narapati na pi vaisho na shudro Naham vani na cha griya kintu prodya nikila paramananda ponambitabda gopir dasa dasa anudasa. I'm not a... These are different Sanskrit terms to describe positions that we may take. And the Brahmin is a spiritual teacher, or the one who's giving knowledge. Kshatriya, it means one who is, you can say, in a position of management or administration. I'm not a Vaishya, one who's in a business or trying to, accumulate wealth in various ways or manage wealth and so on. And I'm not a Shudra, one who is basically a worker, laborer, call it what you will. A person in society. I'm none of these things. Nor am I a brahmachari, a celibate student. Nor am I a married person, a grihasta. Nor am I a retired person. Sannyasi. So what am I? There's not... I'm nothing. The Lord Chaitanya says, what am I? I'm the eternal servant of the servant of the servants of the maidservants of the most intimate servants of Krishna. I mean, that's our position. It's a spiritual position. We do have various responsibilities in this world and we have to act accordingly, but the real I, the real me, is beyond that. And ideally, human life is meant to inquire how to understand who am I? What's the purpose of life? And most people's idea of dharma, the next one is dharma, and then we have, by performing dharma, we get some economic development. That's the idea that we get some comfortable material situation. We can enjoy sense in, and we get fed up with that, or we suffer too much, or whatever it is. Some aspire for moksha or liberation. And these are generally known as the four, you could say, purposes or practices of human life. Elevation to heaven falls within that category. Liberation into the Brahmajyoti, the oneness, falls into that category. This is most people's maxim of human life. For most people, it's not liberation or here and now, money and sensing. If religion doesn't help us to achieve that, what's the use of religion? And unfortunately, that's only too common. And obviously not everybody, but it's too common. And it's almost preached. I remember when I lived a long time in Malaysia, and there was this one Christian group who were preaching very strongly. They did get stopped by the government, actually. But it was a Muslim country, so they were stopped. But for some time, not for a long time, they were preaching strongly to the Hindus, because the Hindus, at least in Malaysia, are not very, you could say, very strong in knowledge and philosophy. They're kind of sentimental more. So they were preaching very strongly. The proof they were preaching, they had it in their magazines, the proof that you were worshipping the devil is that you were not very well off financially. That was their philosophy. You were poor. The proof that we're worshipping God is that we're rich. That was their philosophy, or at least they were presenting that as their philosophy. And a lot of simple, minded people, a little pious maybe, but they bought it. They thought, wow, that's true. I can get more wealth. I can get maybe maybe I can go to America and study. Maybe I can get a nice house. Maybe whatever. Different things they were offering like this. And for many people in the world, this is pretty simplistic and basic, but their main interest, this is only natural for most people, is that, oh, fill my belly nicer, dress myself nicer, get more money, get a nicer education, nice social system. In other words, to try to be comfortable in this material world. But that's not the purpose of human life. And maybe it's one thing we have to do, but it's not the ultimate purpose. It's the purpose of the animals, the birds, the beasts, all other living entities. And human beings are supposed to protect them and facilitate the other living entities. We usually. And human life, but the human being, if we understand the spiritual goal of life, all problems are solved. The fighting between humans is based on a bodily platform, identifying that I am a man, I am a woman, I am a this and I am a that. And we quarrel. And sometimes we fight. I'm a communist, I'm a capitalist. I'm a Muslim, I'm a Hindu. I'm a Catholic, I'm a Protestant. These are all false identities. We're not Catholics or Hindus or Muslims. We're not single. Yeah, externally, positions may be there. The real position of the soul. And as long as we don't understand our spiritual identity, there will always be problems. There is no solution. It's just adjusting things. More science, no solutions. You know, so what? And so what? What does it make? £1,000 going to the North Pole to get a picture taken. What a waste of time and money. Madness. Yeah. So what? Doesn't help anyone get free of birth, death, disease, and old age. Doesn't you get a little bit of a buzz, but not for long. Especially when the boat coming back stuck in the iceberg and they had to be taken out, which is what happened. But everything in this material world, for the karma, we have to accept suffering. Even in this lifetime, it often happens. And the quality of I wouldn't suggest all kinds of horror stories, more or less. The nature of the material world is dukkhalayam shashvatam. It's a place, temporary, where you cannot stop suffering in the material, because we don't belong here. If you push somebody under the water, you say, enjoy yourself. You can't last long like that. And the material world's a little like that for the soul. We're like in a natural habitat. And as long as we try to make this unnatural pleasing, we're losing our opportunity of getting out of it. We become attached to it. This mixed happiness and distress, we become very attached to it. Don't want to let go. No, mate, I'm enjoying myself. I can smoke and drink when I want, which you can't really, but we think we can. I've got, a nice wife. It was nice for a while. Nice kids, but I've got no money left at all to study in America or something. Nice house, but I still got 50 years of mortgage to pay on it. And life's pretty good actually. The medical bills aren't too bad. Still got one leg left. Whatever it is. Football team got thrashed 20-0 yesterday, but it wasn't too bad. And whatever, lost my job. Got a nice job. Well, at least I can tolerate it. Anyway, 90% of people said they didn't like their jobs in the survey recently. What to do? Anyway, the television's there, my mobile's there, text messaging, and nice things. This material world, It's a little bit of happiness, no doubt, to satisfy our senses. But it doesn't last. Why we spend our whole life just fighting against unnecessary, the grain, trying to fulfill our identification, trying to satisfy our needs of this identification, and sometimes clashing with others over it, when we don't need to. That's the silly thing. If we had no choice, but we do have a choice. People may not consider they do, or may not want to make that choice, but Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, is making it clear we do have a choice. We don't have to spend our whole life just trying to accumulate and enjoy the material body and mind. That comes anyway due to our karma. You try hard and you're still not happy sometimes, and you don't try at all and you feel happy. It's the nature of karma on the material world. We're like a witness to these events. We're not actually the primary doer. We're a witness to what's going on. But because we identify with it, we become completely affected. Oh my gosh, what's going on? Oh, something happening. But it's just like a passing dream. Wake up. The scriptures advise us to wake up. So Srimad Bhagavatam is trying to help us to think about waking up. Even as aspiring devotees, identifying ourselves with various material conditionings and fighting over it. So we'll just read the rest of the purport. We only read the first line. First, one should be religious. This is for normal human society. One should be religious, observing various rules and regulations which we very enthusiastically try to not follow and try to change them in many cases. And then one must earn some money for maintenance of his family and the satisfaction of senses. Those things are basically required. But there should be some regulation, but we don't like those regulations. We don't like those restrictions. And anyway, without getting into too much detail, there's been so many cases in history where religious teachings have been changed because people don't like these statements in the scriptures. So they change it, thinking now we can be more happy. It doesn't work like that. Happiness comes from the Supreme Person. It doesn't come, just by our interaction with the material objects around us. That's the karmic part of it, but it's not the ultimate cause. The most important ceremony for sense gratification is marriage, because sexual intercourse is one of the principal necessities of the material body. Marriage is there to help regulate it, to help us to come to a higher platform of pleasure, not to restrain our pleasure, but to help us to achieve a higher platform. Although sex life is the most enjoyable sense gratification in the world, most people say, nonetheless, it binds us in karma. Yanmain tu nadi grihamedi sukham tu cham. Although sexual intercourse is not a very exalted requisite in life, both animals and men require some sense gratification because of material. One should be satisfied with married life and not expend energy for extra sense gratification or extra sex life. As for economic development, the responsibility for this should be entrusted mainly to the Vaishyas and Grihastas. The Vaishyas, as we mentioned earlier, are mainly the productive class of society. They organize in traditional society, the agriculture. They organize the production of foodstuffs, or they help to oversee trade and different production of various necessities. Now it's more businesses, industrial or something like that nowadays. But traditionally it was more agrarian. But whatever it is, they have that propensity to engage others in production and in distribution of the products like that. Business. So they're the Vaishyas, and the Grihastas are the marriage sector of society. What was his name? Marshall, I think. I remember when I studied economics, one of my degree, one part of it was, and there's one law there, that without family life, the impetus for economic development is the family. One of the, I think it was Marshall, one famous economist, made that clear statement that without family life, there's not much impetus for economic development. So generally, the married life, one has to have a house, generally, and then all sorts of other things, maintaining of the children, and so many things in married life. And you has to work. Nowadays we have social benefits and so on, but traditionally one had to work in order to maintain one's livelihood, responsibilities, etc. So that's part of society. This productive or economic development in society is mainly the married people, and which is the majority of society, of course, and the Vaishyas, like that. And then we have Brahmin, Grihastas. Brahmin, Grihastas should be satisfied with a life of Adhyapana, Yajana, and Yajana. There are 6 general activities of the Yajana, and Dana Patigraha, and like that. There's 6 things. Being learned scholars, teaching others to be scholars, learning how to worship the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and teaching others how to worship Lord Vishnu, or even the demigods. There's only 4 of those are mentioned here. The other ones are receiving charity and Dana Patigraha, giving charity. They don't keep anything, they just move things around in a favorable way so that people get the benefit, etc. A Brahmin should do this without remuneration. They don't take a salary nowadays. My brother had one friend who was a priest. My brother was an accountant. He had a friend who was a priest, and they used to play golf together. That's how they got to know each other. They were golf partners, and not the usual ideal thing for a priest, you could say, but they got to do something to keep themselves going, I suppose, keep them happy. And the priest asked my brother if he for the church, because they were having a bit of problem getting their finances together. So he agreed. He said, but my brother said, well, you know me, I'm an agnostic, I don't believe in all these things. And the priest said, no, don't worry about that. My brother's name was Derek. He said, don't worry about that, Derek, I don't believe either. True story. So, but it's a good job. It's a cushy job. What to do? Not usually the case, but that, these exceptions maybe. But this is type of thing. They're paid, If they're not paid, it's very hard for people nowadays to just depend on God, just depend on others, like that. And people think it's like a lazy beggar or something, but it's not. Because those who are preachers, those who are spiritual leaders, they have the most valuable thing to share with society. Most valuable thing. As soon as you get paid, you become more or less obligated to the one who's paying you. You become possessed by the master. Say what they tell you to say, otherwise they get rid of you. And that's in many religious lines. You're kind of paid, and and on the other side, you got money, and if you're not very spiritually mature, and they end up doing nonsense. As for the Kshatriyas, they are supposed to be the kings, rulers of the land. The land should be distributed to the Vaishyas for agricultural activity, cow protection, and trade. Same things. Of course, now it's not quite like Kshatriyas, the leaders of society, are the actual. No one owns land except for the Kshatriyas. Own it on behalf of the Brahmins, and the Brahmins on behalf of God. The land belongs to God. The actually belongs to the Brahmins in terms of the material world. Everything belongs to them. Because they have more important things to do, studying Shastras, teaching Shastras, etc., worshipping the deity, engaging others in the deity worship, And they just leave it to the Kshatriyas to do all the management. They have more important things to do. That's stated in the Bhagavatam. The case of Prithu Maharaj, when he met the Kumaras, the conversation took place. When the Prithu Maharaj, when they came to see him, he was the king. The Brahmins, Prithu Maharaj said, actually, my duty is to give charity. It's already all yours anyway. But out of your kindness, and you have more important things, leave the responsibility up to us lowly Kshatriyas to manage the world. This is the mood. Prabhupada says it's just like someone who puts their money in the bank for the bank to care for it, but it's not the bank's money. It belongs to the person who deposits the money. We're in an age now where that may not always be quite like that. The Kshatriyas think they're in charge, the Vaishyas and Kshatriyas, and they don't care less about the Brahmins. The Brahmins have to get rid of them, basically. And they become compromised. They have a headless society, basically. Headless. The Brahmins are supposed to be the head, guiding society towards the ultimate goal, but there is no such thing, practically. Become headless. Heads chopped off. And if you try to be a Brahmin, then they try to chop your head off as well. Because, they want to keep things the way they are, basically speaking. Supposed to give the land to Vaishyas, and as long as the Vaishyas properly utilize the land, they can use it, and then there's some tax. The Vaishyas have to pay production tax to the king or the government. They can keep, trade it, or use it as they feel needed, etc. But that's not the case now. Everyone's overwhelmed with this greed and competition and so on. Even if you want it, it's cooperated, it's designated, it's possessed, misused. Very hard nowadays for people to live a simple life. You can do, but it's very hard. Society doesn't facilitate it very easily, that's for sure. Shudras work. They're general people, they just work. They're not really able to do business or manage something big. They work. That's the way it's always been, the way it always will be. The majority of people, just like the body has different parts, society has different parts, and they do their part. And if we play our part, we can be happier in this material world. Nowadays, the tendency is more to imitate, to try to be something we're not. And people are not happy, even if they've got money, they're still not happy. Because they're wrongly situated. In a simple situation, being protected, provided for, people could be more happy. But unfortunately, things are not always like that. Sometimes they should engage in occupational duties as cloth manufacturers, weavers, blacksmiths, goldsmiths, brass smiths, and so on. Labor and produce food and grains. Nowadays it's working in offices and factories. These are the different occupational duties by which men should earn their livelihood. The Kshatriyas receive tax, the Vaishyas by doing business or agriculture, and the Shudras, they get remunerated for their work in various ways. However, everyone is engaged at the present moment in technological advancement. IT, I didn't say it, but now it's IT, which is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Ugra Karma. Beautiful, beautiful dialing tone, wasn't it nice? Ugra Karma, we often make this, one devotee mentioned this, it's pretty nice. Where did this start from? The Industrial Revolution. Where did it start? Oh, a long time before the war. Well, it depends which war you mean. There's never stopping wars. Where did it start?
1850s?
No, I say when. Where? Where?
In England.
England! Good old England in Shropshire. And it went to Lancashire and this shire and that shire. But it started there. This is in the United Kingdom. Normally, what they put for short? UK, right? UK. Ugra Karma. UK. Yeah, UK. It's where this Ugra Karma business started. Did sense gratification really accelerate? France, always been there. But where did it, in modern age, where did it really accelerate? America. What do they call America? USA. Unlimited sinful activities. Or we could say unlimited sensual activities, either way. I don't know if Krishna's kind of arranges these things, but it does remind us of these things, that's all I can say. Ugra Karma. Ugra Karma means unnecessary, nasty work. I mean, working in mines, working in factories. Nowadays, maybe not quite so externally, but it's still hellish. You work in Paris, isn't it intense? I mean, so many people tell me that. I've not worked in Paris. 2 hours they take sometimes getting to work. Huh? And then it's like, so intense, you've got to work hard, otherwise you lose your job, doing things you don't really like doing. And, struggle. Unnecessary. Well, what to do? Kali Yuga, the age we're in. Men are engaging in many sinful activities and becoming degraded by opening slaughterhouses, breweries and cigarette factories, as well as nightclubs and other establishments for sense enjoyment. In this way, they're spoiling their lives, because that's the outlet. For all of that, you've got to go home and have a drink, have a smoke, watch the TV, go to the club, do something to kind of relieve on stress, But it shouldn't be like that. But in most cases, it is. In all of these activities, of course, householders are involved, and therefore it is advised here with the use of the word api that even though one is a householder, one should not engage himself in severe hardships. Live a simple life. Simple living, high thinking, but now it's high living and simple thinking, or sinful thinking. As for those who are not grihastas, the brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, sannyasis, students, retired and renunciates, they don't have to do anything but strive for advancement in spiritual life. This means that 3/4 of the population should stop sense gratification and simply be engaged in the advancement of Krishna consciousness. It may not be 3/4, but in terms of, divisions of society, the majority are generally grihastas. Only 1/4 of the population should be grihasta. It doesn't generally happen like that. And that should be according to laws of restricted sense gratification. The grihastas, vanaprasthas, brahmacharis and sannyasis should endeavor together with their total energy to become Krishna conscious. This type of civilization is called Daiva Varnashram. One of the objectives of the Krishna conscious movement is to establish this Daiva Varna ashram, but not to encourage so-called Varnashram without scientifically organized endeavor by human society. So that's a big subject in itself. Someone could do the same verse tomorrow, and I suggest they do, and discuss Varnashram, because Prabhupada wanted how it's to be done, what form it takes. That's obviously a subject of discussion, but Prabhupada definitely wanted it, to help people to live a simpler life, so they have more productive energy for spiritual pursuit. But unfortunately, we ourselves are still locked in a kind of way. So we're chanting Hare Krishna. But it's hard to make that adjustment, so conditioned. But Prabhupada wanted that we do. Find our place and play our parts in this great mission, to try to help people, to try to help society, to become free of this clashing and this, by putting Krishna, Prabhupada specifically says here Daivi Varnashram, and not so-called Varnashram. He wants a scientifically organized endeavor. Scientifically organized doesn't mean, by the modern day scientists of NASA or something. It means spiritual science, based on the scriptures, based on, Ishavashamidam Sarvam Yat Kinchajagajam Jagat, the principle of the Upanishads, a God-centered society, organized, Chaturvanya Mayashishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha, according to the direction of Krishna's direction as he's given in the scriptures. It's given by God. And the more we cooperate with the will of God, the more we get free of this material conditioning, or ignorance, or identification with this world. We start to identify ourselves as the servants of the servants of the servants, so on, of Krishna. That's the purpose of Varnashram. It's not just to accommodate our conditioning, but to release us from the conditioning. So a certain amount of identification with one's position is naturally there in the stages of development. But the whole point is as a head. The head is there guiding the body towards relief, towards actual realization of who we are, who we actually are. It's not just a materially nice arrangement, but it's an arrangement to help release us from identifications, purify our hearts, give us the chance to become absorbed in higher purposes, in higher goals of life, hearing and chanting and so on and so forth about the Absolute, the Supreme Person, Krishna. But it's 9:05, and this is a big topic. Maybe tomorrow I would suggest you can even re-look the same verse, but it's up to you. It's a verse which requires more than just a brief overview, as every verse, of course, does, but this verse particularly has very sanguine and relevant points within it, so many. Okay, I'm going to finish there because we're leaving. I'm leaving. I've got to get ready. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Any questions? Yes, Vidura Prabhu.
I don't understand how.
Neither do I. How I could be?
Dependent in a general sense, dependent on donations from people.
Yeah.
And preserving knowledge when giving it, because you have to give the knowledge to the people who are paying.
Yeah, well, we're in a unique situation, and not unique, we're in a normal situation in this world now, materially speaking, but not a Vedic system. We're, or even go back, I don't know how many years, but I haven't got historical knowledge, but I believe that there were times in history, probably in the Christian religion too, where the priests, the monks did not receive remuneration in terms of offering their services. People naturally gave them what they required because they had respect. It was organized in a way which respected the religious order. I know when I was a child, anyone who was a priest was almost saluted in England. They weren't very elevated, maybe were, but they were basically, no one would ever dream of not showing respect to a priest or, whoever, whatever you call it. Even doctors were in the same category. Doctors were also looked up to. Teachers were looked up to. Do you remember that, Gopaswami? Now, a little bit, but nothing like what they used to be. Nothing at all. In fact, sometimes not at all. But there was a respect. And, of course, they were taking salaries. Priests may or may not have been, but the doctors and teachers were. But traditionally they weren't, because the whole society was geared around that they're giving such a valuable gift. People would automatically give something in return, whatever was needed. And the priest and the teacher would only take what they needed. That was the other part of it. Because Kali Yuga is really, the real basis of Kali Yuga is two things. One is the corruptness of the religious order, Shringi, Kali got in through Shringi, the Brahmin, the son of a Brahmin, who misbehaved. And the second is the artificial monetary system. These two factors are the two main gates of entry of Kali in this age, which has destroyed all the good qualities of human beings. So they don't think like this so much now. Some people still do. If you go into, for instance, if you're going into villages, not just in India, other places too. When I go out to distribute books in Malaysia, I have people coming up, Chinese people, bowing down before me, bringing baskets of fruit. I don't say anything. They just come. They see you're a monk, they come out with baskets of fruit and present it in front of you, or money. You know, it's still there in a small way. This understanding is still there of how we can really get the human body. Some people still have it. But generally in the West, it's not so much the case, if at all. It's extremely rare. But it does work to some degree, and it doesn't work to the, you could say, from one point of view, is anyone a Brahmin? Okay. Are we really selfless? Or are we also, looking for our own, whatever, what I'm going to get out of it? It's like, these positions are not just designations, they're qualities, characteristics applied to it. It's not just born in a Brahmin family, or because you've been given a Brahmin thread, you're a Brahmin. It may be from the point of view of activity, but if we read in Bhagavad Gita, you'll see, what does Krishna say a Brahmin is? There he doesn't say a Brahmin isn't one who does arti. It isn't one who it's qualities of the Brahmin. It's not what they do, it's their qualities. So if a person doesn't have those qualities, he's not going to attract welfare. He's not going to attract that so much. There'll be cheating going on. And that's what's happened in France, isn't it? In many ways, with the Catholic Church. It's because it's become, people look at it badly in many cases, because of these things. The cheating has gone on, of various kinds. So if the head of society is cheating, then what do we expect everyone else to do? But if the head is actually playing its proper part, these things there'd still be a good chance that would be going on, that people would naturally want to give, as the representative of God, they would want to give some offerings. Brahmin has really nothing to need. He doesn't need anything. Place to stay and some food. What else do you need? Quite simple. Doesn't need cigarettes, doesn't need cars, doesn't need televisions, doesn't need holidays, doesn't need a lot of money to feed his white elephant wife or whatever it is. Doesn't need all these things. Very simple. Very simple. Doesn't need a bank balance, doesn't need anything. Very simple. More than enough, God will provide. They depend on God. When someone depends on God, God provides. But as I say, in this age, you can see it's not so easy, but it still happens. A little bit. It does. And if there's genuine sincerity there, it will happen. It happens. But, we're just, what can I say? Maybe we're not so qualified, and the society we're living in definitely isn't educated in that regards. So one of the reasons Prabhupada wanted is to try to establish some kind of varnashram. Something at least. Hare Krishna. So if anyone wants to give a donation afterwards, you're confirmed. If anyone wants to give a donation afterwards, I'll sit here for 5 minutes and you can... I promise I won't get a very expensive... Not like that, We'll sit here hoping that this person will give a donation. They're agreed. Give me a donation. He's a grihasta. Not like that. That's immediate disqualification. There's no such thing. Just whatever Krishna provides. The Brahmin is one who accepts whatever Krishna provides, In emergency, they may do something like, a little innocent tray or something. They may do it in absolute need. Hare Krishna. Absorption. Yeah. And the Brahmins, they have to be absorbed in the higher things. If they're absorbed in the lower things, it's useless. They have to be absorbed in, the goal of life. They have to be absorbed in spiritual realization. They have to be absorbed in what's the real welfare for other living entities. How to really benefit others. Not just feed the belly and clothe the body. That goes on, needed. But the higher purposes of life, if they're not absorbed, no one else can be absorbed. Very hard for people. That's the challenge. If we're not absorbed, we can't solve any problems. Absorbed in what? Absorbed in Krishna consciousness. That's our... Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said there's nothing lacking in this world except for Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Everything else is there. It may be misused, but it's all there. Food is more than enough to feed twice the world's population. No shortage in reality. Because we're greedy, therefore it looks like some people are not seeing it like that. But with Krishna consciousness, everything becomes adjusted. If we have any problems in our movement, it's only because of a lack of Krishna consciousness, believe me. It is nothing to do, our management's there, of course it has something. But ultimately it's only lack of Krishna consciousness. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Management is there to facilitate Krishna consciousness. Haribol.